MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. This is episode 275. The playoffs are rolling on, and joined with me just like every single week, we got Jason Vivang. Jason, I don't have any the corny opening this week about anything related to you, so I'm sorry, but how are you?
Right.
It's Thanksgiving week, I'm giving thanks to not being corny this week.
Hey, it's a good week, right?
Yeah.
Shorter week for work. Recording
exactly.
it with light, with the sun out. So
I know if you're watching this on YouTube or Goals TV, and you notice a lot of sunlight in the room, it's because we're recording this hours sooner than we normally do record because of Thanksgiving and everything like that. And I guess in relation to that, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope everyone enjoys some holidays, some food, some drinks with some friends, family, and everyone in between. That's pretty much all I got. I'll make sure that a cigar and a drink will be had this week, and we'll enjoy the MLS action in the upcoming weekend. MLS is back after a nice long international break, and just some quick, I guess, news that we're not going to talk about at all, Jason, unless you have a comment you want to make on anything I say here. But obviously, USMNT, CONCACAF Nations League, we end up beating Trinidad and Tobago 3-0 at home, losing to Trinidad and Tobago 2-1 on the road after an absolute embarrassing Serginho Dest red card. But through aggregate, we do advance to the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals and qualify for Copa America 2024. So we get the job done in an embarrassing fashion, and that's what I'll leave there. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that, but go for it.
Yeah, you kind of said it. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to say. I feel like everything that's needed to be said is out there. You saw the teammate reactions. I think no one really liked what happened there. So
exactly. Go listen to what Tim Ream said, and I find it hard to disagree with anything there. DC United, they've hired Ali McKay as their new general manager. Ali McKay was the assistant general manager in Nashville for the last 5 seasons. Chris Armas is announced as the new Colorado Rapids manager. We can talk about that, I think, once we get more into the offseason there. But Armas is back after his time as an assistant in England. Some clubs announced some season-ending moves, Chicago Fire being one of them today. Wyatt Omsberg, Jonathan Dean, Fabian Herbers are some of the notable ins. They also bought the contract for Haile Selassie, so that's awesome. And then on the outs, Aceves, Doumbia, Kai Kamara, some homegrowns were the notable names there. Anyone that you wanna give some love to before we?
I really like Haile Selassie, so
yeah.
I'm pretty happy that he's in. Obviously, I was sad Kai Kamara is not, but I think that was partially his decision to not stay.
Yes.
So I can't really fault it. I feel like I've said enough about the Fire over the last few weeks. Just let them do their thing. And
I always want to give you your platform. Always want to give you that platform for the Fire. But just super quickly, Atlanta, they only retained one contract. There's a lot of players on the outs, whether their loans are ending or out of contract or whatever. Just the notable one there is Miles Robinson, who is apparently receiving a lot of European interest. You would assume if the contract is right, Miles is probably leaving Atlanta, and we've seen him play his last game for Atlanta United, at least as of right now or any recent timing. Real Salt Lake, some notable ins: Pablo Ruiz, Jasper Loffelson, Brian Oviedo, some notable outs. Damir Kreilach is on the outs list. Apparently they are in communications to bring him back for next year, but definitely on probably a lower end contract than what he was currently on. And then Austin FC, notable ins: Alex Ring, Danny Pereira, outs Memo Rodriguez, Maxi Arruti, Roddy Redis, Adam Lundqvist. A lot of, I think a lot of notable names that we've seen from a pretty down Austin FC year for sure. So we're not going to dive too much into news. There's plenty of off season to talk about: news, notes, moves, all of that stuff. The most important thing
last pod, we talked a ton of news. So.
Exactly. Last pod, if you want a news pod,
list of news.
Exactly. News pod was episode 274. So go back and check that out. That was kind of just catching up quickly on some of the news and notes that have happened in the last week. This podcast specifically, we're talking MLS Cup playoffs. We're talking conference semifinals, MLS quarterfinals, however you want to word it. That's what we're talking about here. And I think to kind of, I'll say, roughly get everyone up to speed. If you're not up to speed, I'm sure you are if you're paying attention to this podcast, but I just have to go through it. Of the Houston Dynamo eliminated RSL on PKs in their game 3, advancing them to host Sporting Kansas City in the next round. The Seattle Sounders, they eliminated FC Dallas at home 1-0, advancing them to take on and hosting LAFC in the next round. And then the Columbus Crew, they eliminated Atlanta United 4-2 at home so that they can move forward and they can go on the road to Orlando City. So those were the game 3s. Was there anything notable about the game 3s that you wanted to mention before we kind of dive mainly into the 4 games actively going on?
Yeah, I think, and it kind of ties into where we're going to go talking about the next games. But I think it's very telling that all the teams that went to the final game were home teams. And you could argue, I mean, there's better teams who got the home game, but at the same time, like, it definitely makes a difference. Like, Houston lost away in a shootout, so a close game, but Seattle lost 3-1 away to Dallas and then got the job done back at home. And Columbus lost 4-2 and then did the 4-2 back. So I mean, I think it's notable just to say, like what we've always said, home field definitely matters, and I think it's going to continue to matter. Whereas, Houston will be at home, Seattle will be at home, Columbus is not going to be at home. So
the interesting thing there, I think, obviously, is the home field advantage for sure, right? Because I think it's something we've said, it's something everyone says, that home field advantage, especially in Major League Soccer, matters because the home team wins a majority of the time. You very rarely see very good road teams, and I think you saw that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think you saw that in these game 3s, but outside of what?
Outside of Sporting Kansas City, every single home team won their first game.
Yeah. Exactly.
I could probably go through almost every underdog won their next game, except for a few of them.
Did any team actually win a road game besides Sporting Kansas City? Orlando. Orlando did.
Philly won versus New England.
That was
technically Cincinnati over Red Bull, but that's, 8-7 PKs.
That was
Orlando beat Nashville.
Yeah.
And LAFC beat Vancouver. So there was actually a decent amount of that second game, but that, I think you could argue, is just Cincy over Red Bulls. That's a big difference in quality, and it was still close. So
yeah, right. Because I would say the Cincy win over Red Bulls is quality. I'd say the Philly win over New England, with where the state of New England was, is quality. I would say
all of the away wins were 1-goal wins or PKs.
Yeah. Well, because I think it shows you even more, right? Like, again, home field advantage doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win, but it's going to be a 1-goal game. It's going to be a close fought, tough win if you do it on the road. It's not going to be like you win 4-0 on the road over whatever team you're going to talk about, right? Like Sporting Kansas City, perfect example of their 2-1 win their 4-1 win over St. Louis. I mean, sure,
that's the only one that's massive.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's a big deficit, but I think I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and be like Sporting Kansas City, like, wipe the floor. I think some luck went their way as well. But I think, nonetheless, there's plenty of examples of, I think, home teams win, home teams have the advantage, and road teams can do it. You just have to have that a little bit of luck, and I think you have to have that little addition of quality that we've seen in a Dennis Bouanga, we've seen in Daniel Gazdag or a Lucho Acosta or something like that, right? I think that's what the home away advantage really is right now, at least current day in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think the SKC one is sort of an outlier, being St. Louis's first season.
Yeah,
I think we saw
also pretty fair point.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit less prepared for what was to come than, a team like Sporting Kansas City who's been there a million times. So
the one thing that I want to point out about all 3 game 3s, and I'm talking about the teams that won, Houston, Seattle, and Columbus, something that majorly concerns me is they all left me leaving each series with major question marks about the teams. Columbus, I had major question marks about their ability to defend well. Yes, obviously you're going up against the Atlanta side that has Almada or Giamakis, but Columbus were leaky. Columbus allowed some pretty bad goals. I think Julian Gressel was pretty bad over his entirety of minutes in that entire series. Seattle, I mean, offensively, I think major concerns. It was a PK in game one that won them the game. It was, getting embarrassed on the road at Dallas, and then you squeak out a 1-0 victory in game three that was really off of Dallas's one bad turnover in that game. And then game three, Houston RSL. I mean, that's probably the most close knit of teams talent wise. But Houston, look, I guess you can spin it however you want to spin it. Houston had they had the X dog to get over the hump and do it. I just think, Houston, I don't know if they have enough up top where I'm going to be like, okay, I can see them going on and winning MLS Cup. I think all of these teams left have a legitimate shot at winning MLS Cup. I just think these three game threes kind of just left a little bit of bad taste in my mouth about the winning sides. I don't know if you agree with that. I'm just
think
what I saw.
I agree. I would just add there were some 2-game series where I also don't feel 100% confident. Like, I don't feel like any of these series were just blowouts, right? And maybe that's where MLS is, right? There's a deep parity in the league. So like Orlando versus Nashville is a 2-7 and ends 2-0 on aggregate, which is like, that's not convincing for a 2-7 that we might have seen in the past. Even Cincy versus Red Bulls, like they won 3-0 at home, which was pretty dominant, and then they went on the road and won, but the PK shootout. Maybe that's just the road, and they got the job done, and that's all that matters because now they're going to be at home. But I don't know. I feel like almost SKC might have been the most dominant first round. You could maybe argue LAFC, but that 1-0 and that, I mean, even their 5-2 wasn't perfect.
I don't know. I agree with what you're saying for the first point. I think it's all about, I guess, point of view, viewpoint, narrative, however you want to spin it, right? FC Cincinnati went on the road, pulled out the ugly win, or FC Cincinnati struggled and had to go to rely on PKs to get the second win, right? It's all about, I guess, how the person views it, the narrative they want to have behind it, whatever it may be. But the second point, very interesting. Who had the most dominant first round performance? I would say it's Sporting Kansas City. I would say the worst team point wise in this entire playoffs over the course of the regular season. I think they had the most dominant win.
San Jose, but they weren't in the playoffs.
Oh, well, no, we're not doing this. You said last.
That's true. That's true. I was the one who argued
that. No. Playing games are not postseason games according to you. So that's the rule I'm going by. Okay.
I think it's according to the MLS. I don't think those stats count towards like playoff stats.
I guess I don't know how many people really actively keep up with playoff stats either. I feel like that's something completely like. That seems so much like a Major League Baseball thing to me, is like playoff stats compared to like outside of the outliers. No one really gives a shit how many rushing touchdowns. Like
that plans don't count towards it. So that's kind of where I got all this.
Yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. It's all good. We're on to the conference semifinals. We have 8 teams left. And something that I think
preview 4 games now.
We only have to preview 4 games. We got time. I think something that I said at the end of last episode that I just want to make sure is repeated this episode for people who might have missed it or whatever, is the MLS Cup is going to be hosted by an Eastern Conference team. At this point, with St. Louis being eliminated, there's no way a Western Conference team hosts MLS Cup. So Cincy, Philadelphia, Orlando, Columbus, you guys are all going to be hosting an MLS Cup this upcoming winter or this current winter, whatever. Yeah, one of you will be hosting it. Not all of you.
You guys all will. Yeah.
Everyone gets an MLS Cup. No, not that. But yes, every single team left in the East has an opportunity to say that they're going to host MLS Cup. I mean, look, if it's in Philly, I might be going. That's only a quick 2 hour ride. That's an easy drive for me.
Yeah.
I mean, what's closest to you? Cincy? Columbus? Cincy?
I don't know if Cincy or Columbus is closer. Or
It's not
Kansas
Orlando.
City.
Well, and I'm saying it has to be an Eastern Conference team.
Oh, you're right. Cincy or Columbus. I don't know where they are. Let's see. I'm going to pull up the state of Ohio.
Ohio's the closest for Jason.
I'm going to look. What's closest?
Right. We're going to Google
Cincy
Maps.
is definitely closest.
Okay. So if it's in Cincy, Jason, I'm not going to put that on you to go. I'm just saying.
Maybe I will. It just depends on when it is.
He could. Philly, again, yeah. I mean, that would be a nice, easy drive for sure. But let's dive into these matchups.
Like a 5.5, 6 hour drive.
I'm committing myself to a 2-hour drive. You're like, I'm committing you to a 24-hour road trip.
Double.
Yeah, exactly. Let's dive into these matchups. Saturday, November 25th, this upcoming Saturday, we have the two Eastern Conference games. Let's start with the number 1 overall seed FC Cincinnati hosting the number 4 seed Philadelphia Union. I did this actually outside of order, so that's great, but it's fine. We're gonna adjust here. I think the one thing that I do definitely want to note about this round, in case you're new to Major League Soccer, you're new to understanding this new playoff format, because
this is new for us too.
It's new for us too, for sure. This is now single elimination. There is no home and home. There is none of that. It's single elimination. If the score is tied at the end of 90 minutes, the game will go into 2 15-minute extra time periods. If the score is still tied after those 2 15-minute extra time periods, then the game will go into PKs, as we saw in plenty of those first round games. So full 90-minute game, one game, no away, home, none of that. We're playing games here. So let's talk Cincinnati versus Philadelphia. I'm going to intro this a little bit, Jason. I'm going to turn it over to you. So FC Cincinnati versus Philadelphia Union. Cincy in their last 5 games, 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. Philly in their last 5 games, 3 wins, a draw, and a loss. Historically, Philly has the all-time series record against Cincinnati, but this season, Cincinnati does hold the winning record over Philly. And one of those games, the draw, Lucho didn't play. So that's even showing, I think, Cincinnati's quality for sure. I will just note that at home, Cincinnati in the regular season were 13-2-2, while on the road, Philly in the regular season were 5-8-4. This game does have a lot of injuries and suspensions that I think we're definitely going to talk about, but Cincinnati is not going to have Nick Hagglund in this series due to his season-ending injury, and obviously the major notable suspension that we talked about a little bit last week with Matt Miazga not available for this game. Philadelphia Union, they are out with season-ending injuries to Jakob Glesnes and Leon Flock, and have the major suspension that, again, we talked about last week of Kai Wagner. So a lot of big names, a lot of notable names and starters that are going to be out of this one. Jason, I'm going to turn this over to you. What are your thoughts? What are you feeling? Give me some vibes here.
Yeah, I mean, so good preview. I think going on the road is obviously tough for Philly. Like you said, the record is not, ideal. But the suspensions and injuries are brutal, right? On both sides. I think losing out on MLS Defender of the Year and Matt Miazga is on a red card suspension is really going to hurt them. And obviously Nick Hagglund as well. So you're looking at a very depleted back line, and who knows if someone gets hurt in this game, like you're going to be starting Ray Gaddis, I'm assuming.
So I asked some Cincinnati people. The back line is most likely going to be Yerson Mosquera as your left center back, Ian Murphy as your central center back, and then Ray Gaddis kind of being a converted right center back.
Yeah, so you're kind of asking a lot more out of players who probably weren't expecting to be in this position right now. And then there's also the injury / potential out of Obi Nwodo, which is, I mean, I think we both were pretty happy with how he played this year. Like happy is a weird way to describe it. I feel like we felt he excelled
Yes,
quite a
one
lot.
of the best sixes in the league for sure.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you still have Lucho Acosta, who scored 18 goals this season. I feel like he had – I should have pulled up the assist also, but I didn't.
Okay, I got you.
But I just think, like, when you have a player like that who's leading you, you're in a very good position. And he will patch up small holes and things that they might face.
Yeah.
I think, like, so of all these teams that are remaining in the East, you have a lot of high scoring teams and honestly some pretty good defenses, Cincy being one of those. But with their defense depleted, I think this could be a pretty high scoring game. Obviously, on the other side of things, without Kai Wagner, like that's pretty brutal. That's a huge loss. Leon Flack, I feel like he just continues to improve. He continues to be good ever since he showed up. And he'll be out as well. So the tail of this one, unfortunately, is kind of clouded by all the suspensions / injuries, which is unfortunate because, like, at full strength, this would be an awesome matchup. But I think Cincy has a little bit more firepower and is equipped better to face this Philly team also has, some holes to fill. So, yeah, I mean, I think this will be a pretty high scoring. I honestly think both of the Eastern Conference games have the potential to be very high scoring. He had 12 assists.
He did have 12 assists. If we want to count MLS assists, he had 14. But still, no matter what you consider, he had 30 plus goals and assists in 2023. The dude was a baller. Dude was the MLS Aces MVP, most likely going to be named MLS MVP.
He's going to need to play to that level.
He's going to have to be the MVP of 2023, which he has shown he can be. He's been one of the hottest players for Cincinnati over their last 5 games. He has 3 goals and 2 assists in their last 5 games. Pairing him with Alvaro Barreal, who he has 3 goals and an assist in their last 5 games as well, right? Him and Acosta have been 1A and 1B as far as, people producing on this FC Cincinnati squad, especially on the offensive end. I think my concerns that really kind of just stick out to me, though, have to be the defensive injuries, right? Like Ian Murphy, very good young center back, but wasn't part of the starting 3 that played for a majority of the regular season for them. Ray Gaddis is not a center back. He's done it at times over the course of the regular season for Cincinnati, and he's done it pretty well, but you're getting into the most important games of the season. Now you're playing some of the best teams in the league. You're playing a team in Philadelphia that Cincinnati literally copied their model off of. Like Cincinnati is like baby Philly, like you have a former executives, you have former coaches. Now you're playing the same exact style as them, and it's not like Jim Curtin isn't going to know what's being done on the other side of the ball. You know what I'm saying? So the injuries do concern me, especially if Nwodo isn't 100% or anywhere close to 100%, because he does compensate for a lot of defensive mistakes made by the Cincinnati squad. So if you're down him a little bit, with the knock, you're down 2 of your starting 3 center backs across the regular season. It is going to take a very special, magical performance from Lucho Acosta and Alvaro Barreal. And, you hope Brandon Vasquez can pop his head up at some point, because it's been a down season for him for sure. So I have my concerns about Cincy, but, they are the Supporter Shield winners for a reason. They are a deep team, and Lucho is going to be the MVP for a reason. Like the quality and the magic. Yeah, and they have Coach of the Year. We could throw in Defensive Player of the Year, but Miazga messed that one up. Let's flip it to talking Philadelphia. I can kind of really just go with what you were saying of no Glesnes, no Wagner. That's tough. 2 of the better players at their positions. Within Major League Soccer, Nathan Harriel most likely will be playing left back, and Damian Lowe will be subbing in at center back, like we've seen, especially their last game against New England. Julian Carranza, he's back healthy. He's training, so that's great. They missed him last game, and now with this extended break, they've gotten an opportunity to have Julian Carranza back up top. So it's like on one side, I think you have injuries that are kind of nagging FC Cincinnati, where Philly has injuries and season-ending injuries and suspensions just as much. But almost that addition of Julian Carranza is I don't know, to me, for whatever reason, I guess kind of amplifies Philly's coming in maybe on a little bit of an upper foot. I don't know. It's tough because in their last 5 games, Gazdag, Ure, and Carranza each have 2 goals and an assist each. Like they each have done that same stat line, and they are scoring at a rapid pace. They're scoring and pulling off some classic Philadelphia Union stuff that we've seen over the last few years, where I think you and I both said coming into these playoffs that we had some concerns that this wasn't the same kind of Philly Union squad that we've seen in the past. I don't know. Does anything stand out to you for Philadelphia in this matchup?
I mean, I think what you're so Kai Wagner was their leading assist on the team, 8 throughout the season.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, Gazdag had 15 goals, Carranza had 14 goals, Ure had 10. They know how to score, and they can do it from a variety of different places. And having the options to score in that many ways is pretty massive. So I think that's a huge advantage for them, especially going against a depleted back line. If they can hit their stride, obviously without Wagner, who is a great defender, and then can also play up, play forward, and get those assists, that's going to be harder. But, I mean, you're looking at Gazdag and Carranza as the second and third assists on the team, where you're going up against a Cincinnati that Lucho really carried, right? Like I said, 18 goals. The next closest was Vasquez with 8. So you can – I mean, the idea I would have is go straight to Lucho Acosta, make him feel your presence right away, make him kind of, maybe leave a leg in. I don't know. Kind of rattle them. And I think it has to start with how are they going to defend Lucho Acosta, because if you can kind of take him out of the game or take him away from the action for the most part and prevent balls to him, prevent him from making runs in behind, doing what he does best, which is just be on the ball, be around the ball. If you can kind of prevent that, I think Philly will be in a really good spot to score some goals anyway. So if you take away their by far highest proficient producer,
player,
that is by far, that's just brutal for Cincy. So like you're saying, we're going to need to see a huge performance out of Lucho. But I think on the other side, you have more options who can step up and are probably more confident to step up in those roles, right? Their third highest score has more goals than since he's second. So,
I mean, to that point, and I think it's a great point. If I'm Philly, I'm having Jose Martinez just man mark the shit out of Lucho, try to slow him down, foul him, like you said, put an extra leg in there, whatever you got to do. Like, be Jose Martinez, one of the best D-mids in the league.
It's kind of like a almost compared to like the NFL, like top wide receiver versus the top corner.
Top corner,
like you just put that guy and just say, be like glue on this, prevent everything to him. If you can and I think if you can take him out of the game, that if Mboto is not 100%, right, not amazing, if he comes in at all, right? We don't even know if he's going to play. That hurts their way to progress up the field. With taking away Lucho, it hurts it even more. And then with your back line already hurt and suspended and your best players out, like they're in a tough spot here to really like bring it to Philly. Philly can kind of lock down in the back.
Look, I agree. I think let's get into it. Let's get into predictions. I'll start it if you want. I think the injury concerns for Cincinnati are just too grand, even at home, where home has been a fortress to them this 2023 regular season. I think Philly brings enough know-how, brings enough experience to get the job done on the road. And then, the injuries, I think, are just too great right now for Cincy, because we've mentioned, we've mentioned Hagelin, we mentioned the Miazga suspension, we mentioned Obi Nobuoto having a slight injury. So does Don Baji, so does Santi Arias. Like, this team has a lot of knocks right now, where even if guys are playing, how fit are they? How are they able to get to the level that's needed to put them quality-wise over Philly? I don't know, so I'm going to go with Philly on the road.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth as I've looked at this for a while, and I am leaning Philly. I think it's tough because, to me, we just spent all that time talking about home advantage, looking at the last rounds and seeing how much of an impact it made, right? Like, Philly only won 1-0 versus New England after a 3-1 win at home. So it clearly affects Philly to an extent, right? You said, what were they, 5-18 and whatever on the road?
5-18? That would be a lot of road draws. They are 5-8.
5-8 more. Okay.
18 draws and
18 draws on the road. All right, 5 wins, 8 draws, and 4 losses, right? So honestly, actually, that's not a horrible road record if you consider getting a point pretty good, which I do. So I'm going to go with Philly. I think, like you kind of said, I hate that we're agreeing, because I also really wanted to see Hell is Real in the conference final.
That would be sick. That would be sick.
I think Matt Miazga's suspension is probably the worst part of it all, because if you have Miazga to kind of command the back line, a lot of the concerns that I think we both have can be sort of band-aided over or patched up a little bit.
I agree.
Whereas you're losing kind of like the heart of your defense, potentially one of the best sixes if he's not 100%. He still plays, how is that going to affect the way the game goes, right? Like, if you're not 100%, can he go the full 90? Can he not? Is he going to go the full 90 and just be slow or tired or not with it necessarily? So, like, the entire back half of Cincy is just decimated pretty much, and I think that's going to hurt them a lot. And like I said, I think Philly's a smart enough, well-coached enough team to realize that, like, you take out Lucho in this matchup in one game, if you can stop him from creating just the magic, then I think they can pull it out.
And look, you have a goalkeeper in Philly and Andre Blake who can create, who can defend a little bit of magic in his own right, and he's done it.
He can win on his own, right? Like, he could be the reason. He could be the MVP of this matchup.
He can make a miraculous save against a Lucho Acosta ball. That was a Batago top corner, right? Like, I think Philly's healthy strength right now is Cincinnati's unhealthy weakness, and I think that's the difference. I hate agreeing with you. I do like a little bit of back and forth, but look, and this isn't a game that if Cincinnati wins, I'm going to be like mind blown. We've talked about Cincinnati, Lucho, Barreal. They still have Yerson Mosquera. They still have Brandon Vasquez, and they still have Junior Moreno, who's been very good this year. I think Cincinnati have every opportunity to win. I mean, I agree with you more in the wording of I give Philly the slightest of edges of winning this game.
I think if Cincinnati is to win and get Miazga back and kind of get another, I don't know how long it is, probably 2 weeks knowing MLS, but and get some time for these players, like, the whole next matchup will probably preview completely differently than this one.
Yeah.
I think the timing of this with the suspension and with the injuries and, I guess, rushed returns potentially of some players, I think that really is driving
the difference.
The opinion.
Yeah. And you did mention the next Eastern Conference game. Let's move forward. I'll give my little intro here to number 2 seeded Orlando City hosting number 5. I didn't write down. Yeah, thank you. I wrote down everyone's seed but Columbus. Number 3 seeded Columbus Crew. Orlando in their last 5 games are 5-0-0, 5 wins, 5 games. Columbus 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. Orlando are unbeaten in their last 14 home games as well. History-wise, Orlando holds the all-time record in this series with 10 wins, 4 draws, and 6 losses. This season, Orlando also holds the season record with a win and a draw against Columbus. Orlando at home, they have 9 wins, 3 draws, and 5 losses across the MLS regular season, where Columbus on the road have 4 wins, 8 draws, and 5 losses across the MLS regular season. No major injuries or suspensions for either Orlando and Columbus in this one. So, Jason, to your point, we're going to talk about this game a little differently. Take it. Where do you want to go, Columbus or Orlando? Where do we want to start?
I want to start with Columbus because I meant Orlando. I want to start with Orlando.
That's fine. We'll start with the higher seed.
Because I actually picked Nashville to beat Orlando, and I felt like it was pretty close in the end, right? They won 1-0 both games in 2. So I guess to your point, they won in 2. They got the job done. Doesn't matter how it happened. Not really.
Yeah. It does. I get your point. Yeah, I get your point.
I'm pretty sure Duncan McGuire didn't score.
He did not.
Either of those games. And that was one of the players that I kind of had on my watch list, because I think the further this goes, the more is going to be asked, right? They're going to need him to continue scoring like he has all season, right? 13 goals.
He does have 4. He does have 4 goals in Orlando's last 5 games. I will just point that out.
Does that include the 2 Orlando games?
That does include the 2 games against Nashville.
Nashville. Dude, I'm talking in circles.
It's okay. So he did have a brace somewhere, but yes, he outside of the 2 Nashville games, he has scored a bunch in recent times.
But that's regular season games, right? So now playoff games. Now I guess we're not talking playoff stats necessarily, but the atmosphere is different, right? Duncan McGuire, 13 goals. Facundo Torres, 14 goals. That's a lot of goals on out of your 2 strikers, essentially.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty good. On the other side, I guess I don't want to mention Columbus a ton, but they have a lot of goals as well. So
they have a lot of goal scorers as well. And to your point of Facundo Torres, I looked back at the games that Orlando and Columbus played against each other this season. Facundo Torres was the most probably successful attacker against Columbus this season. In 2 games, he had a goal and 2 assists. So Facundo was good all season long, and he had some pretty good success against Columbus as well, I'd say.
And he only had 3 assists in the season.
I mean, there you go.
The one thing I noticed though is Duncan McGuire and Facundo Torres don't have a ton of assists overall, right? I think there's 6 combined if you don't count MLS assists, which personally I don't, because that's just not how it works in soccer. But so that might be kind of interesting to watch, because they're going to need production from deeper, I guess. Ojeda had 7 assists on the season.
Yeah, Ivan Angulo on the other side, I think he's been pretty good as of late as well. He did have one of the goals against Nashville, the goal in the second game on the road against Nashville. Again, it was a very rare Nashville misplayed back pass that Angulo kind of fought through Walker Zimmerman and got the ball in the back of the net, right? So the thing that stands out to me about Orlando is that their 2 wins against Nashville were not clean wins, right? We know Nashville's going to bunker. We know Nashville's going to be one of the best, if not the best, defensive team in Major League Soccer. So it's not like I'm out here looking for Orlando to win a game against Nashville 4-1, 4-0. Like, that's just not going to happen, because that's not what Nashville allows. It was going to be very close, eked out wins, and they did that twice. Now, the first goal was a wonder goal. Second goal, I think, was probably more indicative of what Orlando can do, taking advantage of poor plays from the opposition. The thing that does concern me is, okay, does the I think I'm going to say lack of clean goal build up continue for Orlando? Like, is it just going to be hard-fought goal after hard-fought goal? Because I think eventually you do need to create something of your own. You do need to play your own game, and can that continue, or can that be jump-started, these MLS Cup playoffs against Columbus? I think yes. I think Columbus has been very leaky in the back line, and we'll talk about Columbus in a little bit and we'll explain more about there. But I do think Orlando has the capabilities to score in bunches. And I think against Columbus, they can maybe show a complete opposite team that they showed that they were against Nashville. So I'm not saying it's as easy of like Orlando's going to be really good, but I think Orlando's going to show their quality this next round.
I think so. I looked back at both games, right? Orlando had roughly a 1.2 expected goals in both games. In Nashville, so in Orlando, Nashville actually also had a 1.2 expected goals. In Nashville, they had a 0.37. So, like you're saying, I think what is the point is I don't feel like Orlando has been tested really in the back necessarily that well yet.
Definitely over the last two games, for sure.
Over the last two games.
Yeah.
Against Nashville, who we know is that team that bunkers and plays probably better defense than most teams in the league, including Columbus. But the difference in the attack from Nashville to Columbus is going to be huge. And they're going to need Galice to step up. They're going to need their back line to kind of lock it in because they're going against more than Hani Mukhtar. And I think we watched the Nashville games, the Nashville-Orlando games.
Yeah.
There were some pretty horrible misses. Like, I think Nashville easily could have won that first game if Surridge just scores once, I guess.
Putting any part of his body down towards the goal. I mean, look, I think to your point, and let's switch this to Columbus now. From an Orlando City point of view, the offense that they faced against Nashville is going to be the complete opposite against Columbus. You have a team that can score in bunches. You have a team that can score from different points of view. But the flip side of that is now you're going to go up against the defense that's the opposite of Nashville, where they are leaking through some goals. They aren't maybe the most
they allowed 4 away
talented defensive team. Exactly. And look, Atlanta, we know what they have. I'm not going to sit here and say, we don't know that, but you can compare the numbers of Facundo Torres to, I don't want to make this exact comparison, but Facundo Torres to and a Thiago Almada, you can make the comparison to a Duncan Maguire to a Georgios Giacomakis. You can make those comparisons, I think. So this one, I think, has the ability to be the better matchup in the Eastern Conference because I think Columbus is going to score. I think
full strength teams help that too.
Yeah, I mean, look, that helps. Cucho Acosta. Jesus, you and we're not speaking well. Cucho Hernandez.
I never speak well, so.
Cucho Hernandez has 5 goals in Columbus's last 5 games. Yes, some PKs are on there, like you did mention. Diego Rossi also has a goal and 3 assists. This team is scoring a lot. I can't get past the point, though, to be honest with you, that over the 3 games Columbus played against Atlanta, Julian Gressel was poor. Aiden Morris was poor. And I don't think the back line is talented enough to overcompensate for the attack that Orlando can throw at you. I think that they can score in bunches, and I think we're going to see a very high-scoring game. I just don't know if Columbus can defensively hang on in a fight, especially on the road in Orlando.
I feel like we're going to disagree in this matchup because I honestly feel like when I watch Orlando, like you were saying, actually, their creation has not been, has not wowed me enough. And it's hard to say, right? Because Nashville is obviously this great defensive team that we can kind of beaten over the head, right? Like they are a good defensive team. They make teams have to work a lot harder. And so I guess the question is the drop off from Nashville to Columbus's defense larger than the drop off, I guess, from Columbus to Nashville's offense?
It's what you put the focus on. Is it more Orlando can now have the opportunity to score more against a worse defense, or now Orlando has to defend against the better offense? That's personally how I view this matchup.
Yeah. And I think like the same thing with Blake, you could talk about Galice similarly, right? Like I've always been very high on him. He's my preseason goalkeeper of the year. I think he's an incredible keeper. And he can make some pretty big saves. I think the firepower, like you're saying, some of the players have not performed as well, or what we would have expected for Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of change happened sort of mid-season, and it feels like they're still kind of building on that. I think Wilfried Nancy knows it is a good coach, obviously. I think he kind of can give people roles that they can compete. And I think in a one-game sort of scenario, he is good enough to put together a plan to be able to kind of infiltrate Orlando, right? To take over and kind of get his best players to do what they do best. You mentioned Rossi. I feel like Rossi hasn't even hit where he can and where we've seen him hit, right?
Yeah.
He has, I think, 5 assists and like 3 goals, I want to say, this season.
Yeah.
And obviously he came season, so it's sort of like a readjustment. Like, we know he's done it in MLS, but a readjustment.
Yeah. Fair.
I think I honestly, so I don't know if you're ready to make predictions, but I am going to pick Columbus in this game.
Okay.
I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game, though. I would agree. I think that the firepower of Columbus. I mean, we were talking about this team as potentially the best team in the league at one point, right? When they went into Cincinnati and just destroyed, right? They just wrecked them.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact score, but it was a lot. I think at that point it was like, this is where this team can go, and it's, can they be at that level the whole time? Obviously a little bit weaker defense, but I think their attack is significantly better. It's like they have Hani plus 2 other Hanis, like instead of where Nashville was at. So I think that will like be a lot for Orlando to handle. Whereas I don't see Orlando creating as many chances consistently.
I'm going to give it to Orlando again by the slightest of edges. These Eastern Conference games to me are the tougher ones to pick because I can see all 4 of these teams winning in some manner because they all do what they do very well. So I think I'm going to pick Orlando by the slightest of edges. I think that what we've seen defensively this season from Robin Janssen, Antonio Carlos, Rodrigo Schlegel, Pedro Gallese, Cesar Araujo, Wilder Cartagena, like, I think that they're so strong in the center of the park that I'm not saying Columbus isn't going to score. Columbus is going to score in this game. But I think that between the veteran leadership on this team, I think the young talent that has proven to be some of the better young talent within the league, I think Orlando just, I think at home, they have to have the edge in my brain. I also think they have enough disturbers where if, Orlando's up late and they're trying to bunker and they're trying to pull an Oscar Pereja and, not, and just, we're going to sit back, we're going to defend, we're going to defend, we're going to defend. They have a few players they can bring off the bench and really, throw a leg in and piss off some Columbus players late for sure. So I'm going Orlando, you're going Columbus. Let's move forward. Let's talk about Houston versus Sporting Kansas City. Number 4 seeded Houston versus number 8 seeded SKC. This is the matchup that we all picked preseason for sure. But Houston are hosting SKC. Houston are 3-2-0 in their last 5 games, where SKC are 4-1-0 in their last 5 games. Historically, SKC holds the record over Houston with 18 wins, 13 draws, and 14 losses. This season, though, the series is even since they did play in the Open Cup. Each team has a win, a draw, and a loss. Houston at home this season, 11 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses. SKC on the road this season, 3 wins, 8 draws, 6 losses. No major injuries or suspensions for Houston. For SKC, they have no major suspensions, but they do have the major injury and losing out on Logan and Dembe, who, unfortunately went down for the season in their last game against St. Louis, who has been very good as of late for Sporting Kansas City. So, Jason, I guess we'll start with Houston, the home team.
Yep.
All right. You want to go for it?
I would say, I think for me, where it starts is options, I think. I mean, obviously, there are stars, right, in Alan Pulido and then Hector Herrera on both sides. But it
Yes.
feels to me like this matchup is the one where there isn't like a massively clear number one player on each side, right? Like you kind of see a
Fair.
large range, I guess,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
performances where you're getting quality from, right? I mean, Bassi had 12 goals, Corey Baird 9, Hector Herrera 5.
Yeah.
Obviously, Hector Herrera kind of dominated the assist column for Houston.
Yeah,
so,
but Coco Carrasquilla just as good on that team as
right.
well, you know?
Well, and Corey Baird ended up with 5 assists, non-MLS assists over the course of the season. So, I mean, I use Botman stats, so like I have to
Yes.
just specify that.
If Jason's talking assists, it's not MLS assists, okay?
Yeah.
I just want everyone to know that.
I mean, I guess it really doesn't make a huge difference probably when you talk about assists that way. But my point is, like, you're getting a ton of quality from different places, right? Like, even I don't know where I was going to say go there, but I would say that I think on both sides actually is the true fact. Maybe a little bit less in terms of Kansas City side because Pulido just kind of did everything. But actually, I don't know. When I look at now, Shallow Eye was super close.
Yeah, I was going to say Pulido and Shallowy have been SKC's hottest players in the last 5 games. Pulido with a goal and 3 assists, Shallowy with 2 goals and 3 assists. Like those two have been pairing up very, very nicely for SKC.
And I think Johnny Russell didn't play in the last game, did he?
Yeah, Johnny Russell, he had picked up a little bit of a knock. I think he had some limited minutes against St. Louis, so he's also obviously going to be factoring into all of that.
Which is, I think, almost a good thing, right? Because he comes in pretty fresh. That's the 3rd highest scorer in the team, right? With 8 goals on the season. So I don't really have a clear direction where I'm going with what I'm trying to say is I think this matchup has the possibility to be really fun because of how it can really come from anywhere at any moment with these teams. Like even Artur in the midfield for Houston is a very high quality player who we have seen create chances on his own. So there's a lot that can happen here.
I can agree with you. I think this is going to be the most fun matchup of all four games we're going to talk about because I think there's the most potential for just chaos a little bit. It's obviously going to be very clean soccer. There's a lot of talented players on the field, but I think there's the most potential here for chaos. I think Sporting Kansas City, the attack is clicking right now. I think you have a lot of confidence. You just upset St. Louis. I think that has to be ringing true right now in the locker room and really motivating a a lot of guys.
And they did it pretty handily, right? Like 4-2, 2-1. They went away and won 4-1. So
yes,
that's.
I mean, they did the damn thing, right? I think right now, to me, my biggest concern is, if this is like this actually probably big of a concern that people can hammer home on is the left back depth. I mean, Tim Leibold is out. Now you have Logan and Dembe who put in 2 great performances for you against St. Louis. He's done for the year. So now you're going to be playing a player out of position at left back. So, I mean, look, I think that's something that Houston can definitely abuse, especially if Coco Carrasquilla is playing that right winger-esque role, then he's going to definitely, I think, probably eat up that space and he's going to create and he's going to perform the way we've seen him perform the entire season, both club-wise and internationally. I mean, look, Coco's hot. He has a goal and 3 assists in his last 5. Hector Herrera has a goal and 3 assists in his last 5. I mean, Bassi has 3 goals and an assist in his last 5. Like, it's that trio right there that when I look at this Houston team, I give them the slight edge over Sporting Kansas City because I think Houston is going to control this midfield. I think Houston's going to control the game through the midfield. And really, it gives them the opportunity for me to shut down anything that could get created by a Daniel Shalhoub, a Johnny Russell, anything really out wide because you're already down in Dembe, who is getting up the field. Johnny Russell's not 100%. I think if Houston kind of keep this game centrally, and I think they like to do that for the most part, like a lot of their goals come from the center of the park. I think Houston can take advantage of some things that Sporting Kansas City just don't have the full capabilities of controlling and don't do well. So I'm going to give Houston the slight edge. I'll go with the pick early on this one. I think Houston have more talent. I think they're the better team right now, even though they're not the most convincing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last round potentially clouded what we actually think of these teams, right?
Yeah,
Where
for
one
sure.
team who is very good all season struggled a little bit against RSL, whereas another team who was not so good all season dominated against the St. Louis team, locked in that one spot pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think Houston can really exploit that left back issue. I think that's something where you just, like you said, a player's probably playing at a position. You have Coco Carrasquilla running at that back line. It's going to be – you can't tell me there's not a huge percentage for a mistake there. And I agree. I mean, I think
that's not going to be a point of emphasis for sure in this game. But sorry, continue.
I would say, like you were kind of saying, both of these teams are coming in with some solid form, with their front kind of clicking at the right times, especially with Kansas City. This is probably the best they've looked all season. And I really have a tough time. I think in this game, I probably would lean towards Houston just on home advantage. I think that is probably going to be the difference maker here, because in all, like the teams are pretty close in terms of where they're at currently, and how they're playing, and home advantage in that case probably means a lot.
That's where I'm leaning, is like Houston's home advantage. I think Houston has more game winners. I think we've already seen Houston win a playoff style tournament this season. Like there's just a lot of things for me that just like Houston check the tally marks for Sporting Kansas City, who have been very good. Sporting Kansas City just got that upset. Their record's been insane. I just think the magical second half of the season run for SKC, I unfortunately think falls short in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, being said, like this is probably going to be a very competitive game
for sure.
But I just think I lean towards Houston as well.
Okay, well, we're both going Houston. Let's wrap up. Well, not wrap up the episode. We have one more game to talk about. Let's wrap up our comments on
one more game.
Wrap up one more game. No, but let's wrap up this preview with the final matchup: Seattle Sounders hosting LAFC, the number 2 seed hosting the number 3 seed. And if you remember, on decision day, that was something that was flipped. Seattle jumped up to the 2 seed to be able to host this game on decision day because LAFC drew Vancouver, I'm pretty sure. So Seattle in their last 5 games, 3 wins, a draw, and a loss. LAFC in their last 5 games, 4 wins, a draw, 0 losses. Historically, LAFC holds the all-time series here with 8 wins, 4 draws, 5 losses. But this season, LAFC also hold the higher, record there with a win, a draw, and 0 losses. I will say, in the 2 matchups between these 2 teams this season, there's only been 1 goal scored, and it was a first-minute goal scored by Matthias Bogusz. So for teams, or for people who are like, you got Seattle and LAFC, you got 2 of the best teams historically in the league, you got all these attackers and whatever, don't get your hopes up too much, because there's only been 1 goal scored in, and it happened in 1 minute, and there's been a lot of empty play.
This is a one game where you need everything, right? Like this is a very 100%. Different scenario than that. 100%. So I would almost say it might be the opposite, right? Like you might be like, "Whoa, this is way more goals than I expected."
And look, I say that, right? And yeah, you get the Dennis Bouanga 16 goals, and you get Rui Diaz scoring, and Ladero scoring, Morris and Rusnak, right? Like I say that there's only been one goal scored in 180 minutes played between these two teams, and watch this be, the goal fest of the quarterfinals, So the last thing I just want to say, Jason, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Seattle and LAFC both have no major injuries, no major suspensions. Seattle at home this year, 7 wins, 4 draws, 6 losses. LAFC on the road, 4 wins, 6 draws, 7 losses. So, all the same numbers there, just kind of mixed and jumbled around. But Seattle, not the most dominant team at home. 6 losses with 7 wins is a little eye-opening to me. LAFC, though, haven't really got it done on the road. So there is also that point there. So Jason, turn it to you. LAFC, Seattle, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
I'm feeling that if you look at their last 5 games each, right, which is kind of what you're going off with some of those records, which are very helpful. Hey, I give it credit.
I'm tossing the history out there for the folks,
So if you go over those last 5 games, I almost said St. Louis, Seattle, 6 goals in 5 games, LAFC 16 goals in those 5 games. So that is a massive difference. As long
Can
as
I point out one
correctly,
stat line that's ridiculous to continue off of 16 goals scored by LAFC in the last 5 games?
Yep.
Of those 16 goals, Dennis Bouanga's contributed to 10. He has 9 goals and an assist in their last 5 games.
Yeah, and he's up to 23 goals on the season. So
his total goals across all competitions is ridiculous. But sorry, I'll stop interrupting you.
Look, I think LAFC, they have a guy who's on 29 goals and assists, and a guy with Carlos Vela on 17, right? So if it's gonna happen, it's probably gonna come from one of those two guys. Like over 40 combined, almost 50 if I'm again doing math correctly. That's a lot of goal production out of those two guys, and I think we've seen it all season. And honestly, with Vela historically, it's not easy to shut either of them down. Be it both, right? On the other side, I feel like Seattle has looked beatable recently. They obviously went 3 games against Dallas, who ended up scoring only 1 less goal than them over that course of that. Right? So Dallas gets 3 at home. Seattle scores 2, 1, and 1 in those games. So not dominant necessarily at home. Like you said, there was a PK to win that first game. And then that last game, wasn't it also a PK or what?
It wasn't a PK. It was a bad back pass by Dallas, and Joao Paulo kind of took advantage. But
it was almost like not massively created by Seattle.
Yes, it's okay. St. Louis is on the mind,
So I mean, I don't know if I want to go to. I feel like you can kind of tell where I'm leaning.
But I'll add on to that point with Seattle, right? I think that's the thing that I'm stuck with is, yes, Seattle's been very good record-wise over their last 5 games. Seattle, we know the players, we know the talent, we know the coaching, we know it's there, right? Like it's again not like I'm saying Seattle can't win this game or shouldn't win this game.
It's pretty difficult to pick against Seattle when we've seen what they were able to do, right?
Exactly. Like Rusnak has 3 goals in his last 5. Jordan Morris has 2 goals in the last 5, right? Like we saw them we saw them beat a Dallas team that is very good defensively, and they got through over the course of 3 games. But my concern is this, and it does point back to the Dallas series of Seattle had to go 3 games to beat a 7-seeded Dallas that was without Alan Velasco, who left early in the first game, and in the third game only beat Dallas 1-0 when Jesus Ferreira didn't play. Dallas was down their 2 best players, you could argue, 2 best players, and Seattle, it just didn't look like the Seattle Sounders that we know and we expect. I think that's the point to me that is concerning about Seattle. When on the flip side, like we've mentioned, I mean, it's Dennis Bouanga, right? The rest of the team hasn't really performed. I will say that there are players and there are positions that are of concern to me on LAFC, but you have Maxime Crepeau back. He's playing very well since coming back from injury. Dennis Bouanga, I just have to read the stat line. In 45 total games this season,
all competition.
that's all comps, MLS, CCL, Leagues Cup, playoffs, and a Campeones Cup game. 45 total games. He has 36 goals and 14 assists. That's 50 combined goals and assists in 45 games. So Dennis Bouanga is a reason why he was an MVP finalist. There's a reason why people call him, one of the best players in the league, because he can do that thing. And you need a game winner, and there's no better game winner right now left in these playoffs, maybe outside of Lucho Acosta, than Dennis Bouanga. I would even push Bouanga over Acosta in some arguments. So I think the concerns I have with Seattle not looking like the Sounders of the past, Ladero's missing, Rui Diaz is missing, and I'm not talking from the roster, I'm talking from the performances on the field. I think that paired with how hot LAFC is right now, the reigning champions, the team that knows how to do the damn thing, I'm picking LAFC.
Yeah, I'm picking LAFC as well. So I honestly thought we weren't going to agree on that one, but we ended up agreeing anyway. But I just want to highlight one thing, right? They almost had identical records this season. Both had 14 wins. Seattle had 11 draws to LAFC's 10, whereas Seattle had 9 losses to LAFC's 10. But the biggest outlier, I'd say, is goal differential, which was 15 for LAFC, plus 15, and plus 9 for Seattle. But also 54 goals for LAFC to 41 from Seattle is a pretty big difference, right? Like in 34 games played all season, they're averaging just over, 1.2-ish goals per game versus almost 1.5. I don't know. I guess that makes it sound not as good. But the goals for...
That is a major difference. That is.
Right.
1.5 is you're scoring more goals over a 3-game span than 1.2, 100%. Right. If you think about it that way.
And 39 goals against versus 32. So it isn't like a huge difference in defensive goals allowed. Yeah. But there is a huge difference in goals for. And I think basically what we've been talking about, you have Bouanga, who consistently has shown up time and time again now this season. He's on fire. You have Vela, who you know what he can do at his best. And I think that LAFC go into Seattle, where you said, the form isn't as incredible as some teams at home have been. Plus, it's really not that far. Actually, a lot of these matchups are not huge trips for these teams.
No, honestly, the SKC Houston one I think might be the biggest.
Orlando Columbus.
Orlando Columbus definitely the biggest. Yeah. Okay. Well, whatever. It's fine. Me and geography not the best.
Well, Texas is big, so you could be right. I don't know where Houston sits.
True.
Texas, but.
You're very right about that. Look, I don't know. I have concerns for Seattle. I don't see.
They haven't dumped out in a while, I think. To me, like as the 2 seed, right? They haven't been whoa, this team is totally incredible.
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair,
and they haven't had as many competitions as LAFC all season.
True. LAFC's been stretched. They've been stretched very, very thin. So that is also very fair. But
I think that actually is a good thing, right? Like it comes to they've played more games, they have more experience, they have shown up in a lot of these games. Obviously, there have been some results that were not great for them, but they're coming in with one focus now. When they've probably been stretched a little more, had more focuses throughout the season. I don't actually know exactly when they played Seattle, but probably one of those was during that time where they were competing in other competitions. So I think it matters in that sense.
No, for sure. And look, I think, I'll finish it up with, I just, unfortunately for, the legends of Seattle that are currently on the roster, I don't see it being a fairy tale ending for Rui Diaz and Ladero and that crew right now. Personally, I think Seattle, if I had to rank all 8 of these teams based off of teams that I think were most likely to win MLS Cup, I think Seattle would be dead last. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I personally,
totally a hot take.
I put them below SKC, and I put them below Houston, and I think
I'm picking them if they're playing SKC.
I mean,
I guess it's possible, so we'll see what happens. But
I don't know. I think Seattle's last. I mean, I think it's, to be honest, I think it's 4 Eastern Conference teams, then 4 Western Conference teams. But it's the difference right now between the 2 conferences. But
the only Western Conference team I think I would put higher would be LAFC, probably.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
If I were to rank all of them, but yeah, I mean, I think the Eastern Conference semifinals are insane, insane quality. I think those were, and personally, those were the hardest ones for me to choose.
Exactly. I think West was easier than the East for sure. I think we'll wrap things up with that. We're gonna go with our picks. So for the 4 games, I have Houston over SKC. I have LAFC over Seattle, Philly over Cincy, and Orlando over Columbus. Do you want me to read yours, or do you know them?
Yeah, I mean, I do know them. It's Houston over SKC, LAFC over Seattle, Cincy over Philly, and Columbus over Orlando.
Whoa, whoa! You don't know them. You picked Philly over Cincy. You just said Cincy over Philly.
I did. I did pick Philly. You're right.
Is that but is that your subconscious brain trying to tell you something?
No, my subconscious brain actually did pick Philly, and then I just got.
All right, Jason's
all I know is we have all the same except for the Columbus. Orlando.
Got it. Yes, we're all the same except for that. I mean, I'm just telling you, since you win, you should have listened to your brain though. But that is that, guys, girls, whoever's listening. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with family and friends, celebrating all of that fun stuff this week. But on top of that, enjoy the weekend after. There's no work. You're relaxing. You're full. You got some drink going on, everything like that. Enjoy the 2 Eastern Conference games on Saturday. Enjoy the 2 Western Conference games on Sunday. We'll talk next week about the conference finals, and MLS Cup's almost here, and it's a wild time.
Hopefully they don't make us wait 6 months again.
Exactly. Hopefully we don't have to watch the U.S. lose to Trinidad and Tobago again in between. On that note, thank you everyone, and enjoy your Thanksgiving.